Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today I wanted to do a video on tapping on trauma. So, first of all, I strongly urge you, if you're dealing with trauma, to find a safe other person to go through it with. Find a coach, a therapist that does tapping that can help support you. With that being said, sometimes you don't have access to this. Sometimes you might not be able to find someone. So I want you to have an idea of how to approach it if you have to kind of handle it yourself. So with trauma, I had done another video that talked about the shock. So when we go through a traumatic event, the first thing that happens, it tends to happen, is shock. So you can reference that video that I've already done about shock. So once you've dealt with some of the shock, if you're actually having to deal with the traumatic events, here is what I would suggest. You can make a list of all the various traumas and then one by one kind of go through them. Now, the one question is, what do I pick? So you can pick a smaller one to work on, or less intense one to work on first. And if you're doing this by yourself, I would strongly suggest that. Do not pick the biggest, worst incident to do first. Pick a lesser trauma off of your list. And then what you would do is simply use the steps of EFT to tap yourself through it. Now, if even a smaller trauma feels too big, what you can do is break that down into parts. So what you could do is just focus on one aspect of the trauma. For instance, you could, let me use a car accident. So if targeting the whole event is too much, you might want to focus on just the sound. Like if there's a sound that is still with you after the accident, you could focus on just one part of it, like the upsetting interaction or the upsetting, conversation you had with the emergency people. If that was problematic, you could focus on just the pain that you went through at the time or shortly after. So you could just pick out one aspect of it and do that. So you could just say, even though I can still hear the crash and crunch of the metal, I accept myself. And then, the crash and crunch of the metal. So you would just be focused on that one sensory aspect. And you can do the same with abuse trauma. Rather than targeting the whole event, you could focus on just one part of it and break it down like that. Trauma work is hard. It takes time. It takes energy. So if you're not feeling like you have energy, you probably don't want to work on trauma. Now, if it's just showing up, which often happens, if it's intruding in your life, if you're having nightmares, flashbacks, etc., then I strongly suggest doing something about it, because that's just going to continue. But again, be strategic. Take lesser traumas first. Work yourself through those. And even with lesser traumas, break it down into parts. You can just tap on the first part of an abuse incident. You don't have to go through the entire thing. And that's probably a good idea. Eventually, you do want to be able to revisit any traumatic event and be able to view it like you're watching a movie from start to finish and not have any big emotional charge. So, but you may have to do that over several sessions of tapping, and that's completely fine. It doesn't matter how long it takes. All that matters is that you eventually get the trauma neutralized and done and out of your system. And because it does take energy, be sure that you're doing a lot of self-care and self-support while you do the trauma work. So, and self-care is very simple. It can just be making sure you're eating, that you're drinking water, that you're resting, that you're sleeping. It can be making sure you're reaching out to your supports, like you're in touch with friends, with supportive family, etc. Self-care can be making sure you are talking to, whatever mental health professionals you may have in your life. Self-care is very simple, but we all need to do it, and especially if you're doing trauma work. So that's how I would approach trauma work. If you don't specifically have a professional to guide you through, make that list, work your way through the traumas, start with smaller traumas first so that you gain confidence that, okay, I can do this, I can work through this on my own. If you get stuck, then please, please, please find somebody to work with, find somebody to help you troubleshoot it. Don't just stay stuck. A lot of times you can work through minor traumas fairly easily, but if you get to what I call the mother load, if you get to a really big trauma, it might be hard to do on your own. Maybe you can. You might be able to, especially if you've built up like that internal ability of, oh, I processed this one and that one and I got that out of my system. Then when you get to the bigger ones, you'll have more confidence and your nervous system will have confidence that, oh, we can handle this. So just a thought there, but please reach out for assistance if you need it. All right, until next time.